In a small, quiet town, surrounded by hills and flowing rivers, life moved slowly. People knew each other, and everyone had their routines. One day, a person walked into the town for reasons unknown to most. They were carrying a quiet sadness inside, though no one could tell from their face. They kept to themselves, walking through the streets with a kind of careful attention, noticing small things others ignored. A leaf floating on the river, the sound of children playing, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery. Each detail seemed to matter more to them than the noise of life around. At the same time, another person lived in the town, someone who was known for helping others without asking for anything in return. They had a gentle presence that seemed to calm anyone who came close. People often stopped to speak with them, even for a small chat, because there was something comforting about being near them. Their life had not been easy either, but they carried a sense of quiet strength that drew people like a soft light. The first meeting happened on a rainy afternoon. The person who had come into town was carrying a bag heavier than they could manage comfortably. The rain was falling steadily, and there were very few people on the streets. A sudden slip on the wet pavement could have caused a fall. But the other person appeared as if out of nowhere, catching them in time. They shared a moment of surprise and relief. They looked at each other, and there was an unspoken recognition of something familiar, even though they had never met. They laughed softly. Not out of humor, but from the relief of the moment. The person who had come to town thanked the other, though words felt inadequate. They started walking together, both realizing it was safer to share the path in the rain. Their conversation was slow at first, about the rain, about the town, about small things that mattered in the moment. There was no rush, no expectation. It's the simple act of talking and walking side by side. Days turned into weeks, and the encounters became more frequent. It was not always planned. Sometimes they would meet in the park, sometimes at the small library, and sometimes at the market. Each meeting brought them closer, but it was never forced. They shared stories of their past, carefully at first, because both had scars that were not easy to speak about. One had lost someone dear. The other had faced struggles that shaped their heart in ways that were hard to explain. Despite the sadness they both carried, there was a light in their presence together. It was in the way they listened to each other, the way one could see understanding in the other's eyes. It was a connection that grew quietly, a bond formed not by grand gestures, but by small acts of attention and care. A hand offered when needed, a word spoken softly, a smile that seemed to understand more than it could say. One evening, found themselves sitting by the river. The water reflected the colors of the setting sun, and the town was quiet around them. They talked about their dreams, not the big dreams that people often share, but the small ones, the ones hidden in the heart. The person who had come into town admitted they felt lost at times, unsure of what they were seeking. The others shared stories of resilience, of moments when life had been difficult, but hope had carried them forward. They did not judge each other. They simply shared and listened. It was in these moments that trust began to grow. Trust that their words were safe, that their presence mattered, that someone could truly see them without trying to change them. They began to look forward to these small times together, to the comfort of being near someone who understood without needing explanations. There was a rhythm to their days that became intertwined. The ordinary moments became extraordinary simply because they shared them. Even in silence, there was communication. A shared glance, a quiet sigh, a presence beside each other that needed no words. They began to notice details about each other that were small but significant. The way one tucked their hair behind their ear when thinking, the other's habit of tapping fingers lightly when nervous. These small observations became familiar, comforting, like a secret language that belonged only to them. The town itself became a witness to their growing connection. People noticed the gentle way they interacted, how they seemed to bring out the best in each other. Not in a showy way, but in the small acts of kindness. The patient listening, the way they carried each other's burdens without a word. The bond was strong, though invisible to most. It was built on respect, care, and a deep empathy that was rare and precious. One afternoon, a person who had arrived in town had a particularly difficult day. They had received news that brought back old pain and fears. They felt a heavy weight on their chest and thought of walking away from everyone. But the other person appeared as if they had sensed the storm. They did not ask questions. They simply sat beside them, offering presence instead of advice. The simple act of being there, of sharing the space, helped ease the pain in a way that words could not. It was a quiet understanding that grew stronger than any spoken promise. Through these experiences, they both learned about patience, about empathy, about the quiet power of presence. Love, they realized, was not always about grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it was about showing up when it mattered most, about seeing someone in their vulnerability and staying without conditions. It was about understanding that every person carries their own weight, and the choice to walk beside them can change everything. As the days went on, their bond deepened. They celebrated small victories together, like completing a project, helping a neighbor, or simply enjoying a beautiful day. They supported each other through fears and doubts, offering encouragement and reassurance. The connection was no longer just a comfort. It became a source of strength, a foundation upon which they could grow individually and together. Evenings were often spent walking through the town, sharing stories and observing life. The world felt larger and more vivid when experienced together. The ordinary streets, the shops, the riverbanks, all seemed to take on a new life because they were shared with someone who cared. Life's simple pleasures became meaningful, and moments of stillness were cherished. They found joy not in possessions or recognition, but in the quiet companionship they shared. One day, they visited a small cafe near the river. It was a modest place, but it became a special spot for them. They would sit and watch the water flow, talking about hopes, fears, memories, and dreams. There was no rush to fill every silence with words. The presence itself was enough. In this quiet space, they began to understand that what they felt was rare, a connection that went beyond friendship but had not yet been named. The town continued its slow rhythm, but for them, time seemed different. Moments stretched, became richer, more layered with meaning. Their hearts were touched in ways that neither had expected when they first met. Each day brought new layers of understanding, respect, and subtle affection. It was not sudden, it was not dramatic, but it was undeniable. By the end of the first part of their journey, they had created a world of their own within the town. A world where they could be seen, understood, and accepted. A world where small gestures carried deep meaning, and where presence was more powerful than words. They had not yet faced the challenges that life would bring, but they had found each other, and in that they had discovered something precious and enduring. The quiet beginnings of their story were full of warmth, empathy, and the gentle promise of a love that could grow into something remarkable. After the first months of meeting, the two people had grown closer. Their bond was no longer just about small encounters in the town, but about understanding each other deeply. They spent long hours walking through the fields and hills surrounding the town, sharing thoughts that they had never shared with anyone else. They laughed together, sometimes at nothing at all, and at other times at memories they kept hidden from the world. Each day their friendship grew into a gentle love, one that neither rushed nor demanded anything beyond presence and care. They began to share their routines in small ways. One would bring a cup of warm drink in the morning, and the other would wait with a gentle smile when the day felt heavy. They noticed each other in ways no one else could, the little habits and quirks that made them human. It was in these moments of observation and care that their hearts began to understand each other without needing words. They found comfort in each other not because life was easy, but because they could face it. Together, one afternoon, they walked to the edge of the forest near the town. The trees were tall and the sun filtered through the leaves in golden patterns. They found a small clearing and sat together, listening to the birds and the sound of a nearby stream. It was peaceful in a way that made the world outside seem distant. In this calm, they shared their fears and uncertainties. One spoke of dreams that felt impossible. The other spoke of moments of failure that still haunted them. There was no judgment, only listening and understanding. In this exchange, they realized that love was not about fixing each other, but about being there in every moment, supporting and understanding without expectation. Their connection began to change how they saw themselves and the world. They became more patient with others, more aware of small kindnesses that could brighten a day. They helped neighbors without being asked, offered words of encouragement to strangers, and even small acts of generosity became second nature. Their love had a ripple effect that touched those around them. It was not dramatic or showy, but it was felt in small ways by everyone who crossed their paths. Sometimes they disagreed, as all people do, but even disagreements were handled with respect. They learned to listen, to understand that two hearts could think differently yet still belong together. There was no need to prove anything or to be right. They found that compromise was not a weakness, but a way to grow together. Every disagreement became an opportunity to understand each other more deeply and to build trust that could withstand future challenges. The town started to feel smaller and more familiar because of the moments they shared together. They visited the marketplace, helped at the bakery, and sometimes simply wandered through the streets, talking to passers-by. Each moment was ordinary, but carried a special weight because it was shared. People began to notice the quiet bond between them, how they seemed to move together, how one often seemed to know what the other needed without asking. It was a gentle presence that became part of the rhythm of the town itself. One evening, they found a small hill where the town looked tiny below. The sky was painted with colors of sunset, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nature. They sat together, feeling the warmth of the day fading and the coolness of evening settling in. One of them shared a childhood memory, a story of a fear that had once seemed unbearable. The other listened carefully, offering reassurance, not with words, but with the understanding that came from the heart. In that quiet space, they felt a closeness that could not be explained, a bond deeper than friendship and stronger than ordinary love. As seasons changed, they experienced life in all its colors together. They celebrated small joys, like the first flowers of spring or the harvest of fruit in summer. They supported each other during rainy days when spirits felt low, and they laughed together when life gave moments of absurdity and surprise. Their love was rooted in simple human experiences that made each day meaningful. They did not need grand gestures to prove their connection because it was already evident in every shared glance, every quiet touch, every presence beside the other. They also began to plan for the future in small, careful ways. They dreamed together, imagining the life they could build without fear or pretense. These dreams were humble, not filled with wealth or fame, but focused on comfort, happiness, and being together. They spoke about home, work, and family, but always returned to the central truth that they wanted to face life side by side. These conversations deepened their understanding and strengthened their commitment to each other. One day, they helped an elderly neighbor carry heavy groceries home. The neighbor expressed gratitude, but it was more than just an act of kindness for them. It was a moment that reflected their growing empathy and how their bond encouraged good in the world around them. Small acts of care became part of their daily rhythm, and they realized that love was not only about their connection, but also about spreading warmth and understanding wherever they went. They faced moments of doubt and fear, as every relationship does. Sometimes life became overwhelming, and the weight of responsibilities made them question their path. But in these moments, they found strength in each other. One would remind the other of their worth and resilience, and the other would offer perspective and comfort. Together, they navigated challenges without losing the essence of their love. It became clear that their bond was not fragile, but had grown strong through shared experience, trust, and understanding. Evenings often ended with quiet walks through the town, sometimes without speaking, just enjoying the comfort of being together. They watched the stars emerge and the town lights flicker in the distance. In these moments, they reflected on how far they had come from the day they first met in the rain. There was a sense of gratitude, not only for the bond they shared, but for the lessons they had learned from each other. Patience, empathy, and the gentle strength of love had become a part of them. Their connection also inspired them to be more creative and expressive. They began to write down thoughts, ideas, and stories, inspired by their experiences together. Sometimes they painted or drew simple sketches of places they visited. This creativity became another way to share their world, a reflection of their growing love. The act of creating together strengthened their bond, showing that love could be expressed in countless forms beyond words and gestures. Through all these experiences, the two people began to understand the depth of human connection. Love, they realized, was not about possession or control, but about freedom, respect, and presence. It was about growing together without losing oneself, and about supporting the other through every high and low. Their journey in the town had become a tapestry of small moments, each contributing to a larger story of care, trust, and quiet devotion. By the end of this part of their story, the two had become inseparable in spirit. They could communicate with a glance, understand without explanation, and support without expectation. Their lives had become intertwined in ways that could not be broken by distance or challenge. The town, once a place of ordinary life, had become a backdrop for the extraordinary connection they shared. Their love, gentle and persistent, was growing in ways that would shape the challenges and joys to come. The second part of their journey closed with the understanding that true love was not always dramatic or loud, but existed in the quiet, consistent presence, care, and devotion that two people could offer each other every day. As time passed, their bond grew stronger, but life began to test them in ways they had not expected. One of them received news that brought back old pain, a reminder of struggles they thought had been left behind. The news was sudden, and it shook their sense of stability. They felt fear and uncertainty creeping in, and for the first time, they wondered if their connection could withstand the pressure. They tried to hide their worry, but the other noticed, sensing the change in mood. The way their eyes lost a bit of brightness, and their steps became slower. Instead of asking too many questions, the other stayed close, offering comfort through presence. They walked together through the familiar streets, talked about small things to distract the mind, and simply shared the space without forcing explanations. It was in these quiet moments that they realized love could be tested without breaking. A case of support was sometimes more important than answers. Each day became a careful balance of handling the unexpected. While staying connected to each other, the person facing the challenge found it hard to open up at first. Memories of past pain made it difficult to trust that sharing could bring relief. But little by little, the other person helped them speak, gently drawing out fears and anxieties without pressure. They listened patiently, never judging, never rushing. And in return, trust grew stronger. The realization came that facing struggles together could deepen love. That vulnerability was not weakness, but a pathway to understanding and connection. Daily life continued, but the atmosphere carried tension. Simple tasks felt heavy, and moments of joy were mixed with worry. Yet in this struggle, they discovered resilience. They learned to celebrate small victories, like a day without tears or a conversation that ended in laughter. These small triumphs reminded them that challenges did not have to define them, and that love could be a source of strength even in difficult times. Every shared smile became a victory over fear. They also faced moments where distance threatened to come between them. Responsibilities and obligations pulled one away for days at a time. Even so, they stayed connected through letters, shared objects, and reminders of care. A simple note left on a desk, a small drawing tucked into a bag, remembered phrase that brought comfort. These small gestures kept the bond alive. They realized that love was not only about being physically present, but also about maintaining a connection that transcended space and circumstance. The community around them also began to notice the struggle. Friends and neighbors offered small support, not in dramatic ways, but by being available when needed. Sometimes this support was unnoticed by the wider world, but for the two people, it made the load lighter. It reminded them that human connection extended beyond themselves, and that the love they shared could inspire and be supported by others. They understood that challenges were a part of life, and facing them with care and empathy was an essential lesson. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, they sat together by the river. The sky was dim, clouds heavy, and the water reflected their emotions. There were no words, only the act of being near each other. They held hands, fingers entwined, sharing a silent promise that they would face whatever came together. It was a moment of profound understanding, a realization that love was not always about happiness, but about commitment, resilience, and being present, even when the world felt heavy through this time. They also discovered the importance of forgiveness. Past hurts resurfaced, and both had moments where fear and doubt led to misunderstandings. But they learned to speak gently, to apologize without ego, and to accept imperfection in themselves and in each other. This process was slow and not without difficulty, but it strengthened their connection. They realized that love was a practice, a daily choice to understand, forgive, and support. Even in moments of fear or pain, they also sought moments of joy to balance the weight of struggle. They returned to places that had once been sources of happiness: the small cafe by the river, the fields where they first walked together, the hill overlooking the town. In these spaces, they reminded themselves of the beauty in life, the things worth cherishing, and the reasons they had come together. Joy became intentional, a deliberate act to remind them that even in difficulty, life had moments of light. As they faced these challenges, their bond inspired deeper empathy. They noticed suffering in others and felt a desire to help where they could. They volunteered small acts of care in the community, helping neighbors, listening to friends, offering time and attention where it was needed. Their love began to extend beyond the personal, becoming a force that touched the town itself. They realized that love could grow through adversity, and that the strength they found in each other could create ripples in the world around them at times. Despair still arrived unexpectedly. They had moments of feeling alone, fearing that the challenges were too great. Yet each time, they returned to each other, finding reassurance in presence and touch. They discovered that love was not about never feeling fear or sadness, but about knowing that someone would stay beside you regardless of emotions or circumstance. This understanding became a foundation that could carry them through even the most difficult times. They also learned to celebrate the courage in each other. Each step taken to face fear, each moment of vulnerability was acknowledged and respected. They cheered each other quietly, now recognizing the bravery it took to continue loving and trusting in a world that could sometimes feel overwhelming. These quiet celebrations strengthened their bond and provided a sense of hope and continuity. Love, they realized, was not only in grand gestures, but in noticing and honoring the strength of the other. Over time, the tests they faced did not vanish, but their approach to them changed. They no longer felt powerless against the world, but empowered by their connection. They faced challenges as a team, understanding that difficulties were a part of life and that love could transform fear into resilience. Their daily lives were a blend of ordinary moments and extraordinary acts of patience, empathy, and care. In every conversation, every shared silence, every touch, their bond deepened, creating a love that was both enduring and human. As seasons shifted again, they began to imagine the future with cautious optimism. They spoke of dreams that had once felt distant, of plans that seemed more possible because they had each other. They realized that challenges would always exist, but facing them together made even the impossible feel achievable. This vision of a shared life became a source of motivation and hope, guiding them forward with steady hearts and mutual trust. In these months, they discovered a deeper understanding of what love truly meant. It was not only about happiness and joy, but about presence, resilience, empathy, and shared strength. They learned that true connection was built not on perfection but on care, patience, and the willingness to face difficulty together. Every trial they overcame became a testament to their growing love, making it richer, stronger, and more profound. By the end of this part of the story, they had faced their first major test together. Their bond had been challenged, but emerged stronger, and they understood that love could endure hardship without breaking. They felt gratitude for the presence of each other, knowing that the trials they had faced would shape the strength and depth of their connection for years to come. The third part of their journey closed with a sense of resilience, a recognition that love was more than emotion, it was action, support, and enduring care through every storm. After facing their first major challenge together, their bond grew even stronger, but life continued to test them in new ways. One day, an opportunity arose for one of them that could change everything. It required leaving the town for a long period, stepping into a world that was unknown and uncertain. The decision was not easy because it meant being separated from the person they had come to rely on so deeply. Fear, hope, and doubt intertwined, making the choice heavy on the heart. They discussed it for hours, walking along the familiar streets of the town, through parks, and past the river where so many memories had been made. Each word was carefully weighed, and each feeling acknowledged. They understood that life sometimes required difficult decisions, and that love was not. It's always about staying close, but sometimes about letting the other pursue what was important. It was a test of trust, patience, and selflessness. When the day of departure came, there were tears and quiet moments that neither wanted to end. They held hands and exchanged words of encouragement, promising to stay connected no matter the distance. There was a shared understanding that absence did not diminish love, but could strengthen it through faith and patience. They also shared small tokens of care, a note tucked in a pocket, a gift that carried a memory, a message to remind them of each other in moments of loneliness. These gestures became anchors in the uncertainty of separation. The days apart were not easy. The person who remained in the town felt the weight of absence, missing the presence, laughter, and comfort of the other. Yet they found strength in memories and in the acts of connection they had agreed upon. Letters arrived, and simple messages of support and love kept hope alive. They realized that love could survive distance when nurtured by trust and care, and that challenges could be transformed into opportunities for growth and understanding. During this time, the person away faced unexpected struggles. The world beyond the town was different, often harsh, and filled with responsibilities that tested their limits. They experienced moments of fear and doubt, but found courage in the thought of returning to the other person. In the knowledge that someone waited who understood and believed in them, each act of perseverance was fueled by love, and every small victory became meaningful, not only for personal growth but also for the relationship that continued to flourish despite distance. Back in the town, the other person also faced moments of challenge. Loneliness was tempered by reflection, creativity, and acts of kindness. They spent time helping neighbors, supporting friends, and engaging in small tasks that brought comfort and meaning. These actions not only helped others but also allowed them to grow in empathy and resilience. They realized that love could inspire goodness and patience, and that supporting the world around them could strengthen their connection with the one they cared for. Through the separation, they both discovered the importance of communication, not just through words, but through presence and thought, memory, and intention. They shared dreams, fears, and reflections through letters and messages, creating a bridge that kept them close, even when apart. This connection became a source of strength, reminding them that love was not bound by physical proximity, but by the consistent care, attention, and trust they offered each other. One evening, the person in the town walked to the hill overlooking the landscape. Remembering the times they had shared with the other, they reflected on the lessons learned through challenge, the growth that came from patience and understanding, and the joy of small acts of care. There was a sense of quiet pride in the resilience they had developed together, hope for the future that felt more solid than ever. They understood that love was tested not by ease, but by the ability to endure and support through every circumstance. Meanwhile, the person away found moments of quiet reflection, walking along streets that were unfamiliar and sitting in spaces that offered new perspectives. They thought about the connection they had left behind, feeling gratitude for the love and support that awaited them. The thought of returning and sharing experiences again provided motivation, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. They realized that love could be a guiding force, offering direction and courage, even when life seemed uncertain. During this period, small acts of sacrifice became evident in both lives. The person who stayed in town gave up certain comforts to maintain routines and responsibilities while keeping the connection alive. The person who had gone away adjusted to challenges, often sacrificing ease and comfort to honor the promises and intentions of their bond. Each act, though small and often unseen by others, reinforced the depth of care and commitment they shared. These sacrifices were not burdensome but expressions of devotion, showing the power of love to motivate and sustain meaningful actions. When they were finally reunited, The moment was quiet yet profound. There was no need for grand words or gestures. They simply held each other, understanding through touch and presence how much the separation had taught them. They shared stories of the time apart, of challenges faced, of fears and triumphs, and found joy in realizing that love had grown deeper through the experience. They celebrated small victories, the courage shown, and the trust maintained. The reunion was not dramatic, but filled with a sense of profound connection and understanding. After reunion, their bond transformed further. They approached life with renewed perspective, recognizing that love was strengthened by patience, sacrifice, and shared experience. They took intentional steps to nurture each other, to create moments of joy, and to support dreams and aspirations. Life was still filled with challenges, but they had developed resilience, empathy, and understanding that allowed them to face difficulties together. With confidence and care, they also shared their experiences with others in the town, inspiring those around them to consider the power of patience, trust, and selfless love. They helped neighbors, supported friends, and engaged in acts of kindness that reflected the growth of their hearts. The community witnessed how love could create strength, hope, and positive change, not only for two people, but for everyone it touched. The months following the reunion were filled with careful attention to one another. They celebrated ordinary moments with extraordinary care, understanding that joy often lay in simplicity. They revisited favorite places, shared quiet evenings, and created new memories that would carry them through future challenges. Their connection had become a foundation for life, one built not only on affection but on shared experience, empathy, and devotion. Through all these experiences, they realized that true love was not about possession or constant closeness, but about mutual respect, care, and the willingness to face life together. In presence or absence, in joy or challenge, they had learned to communicate without words, to understand without explanation, and to support without expectation. This understanding transformed the way they approached every moment, every interaction, and every challenge. By the end of this part of the story, their bond had reached a new depth. The acts of devotion, patience, and understanding had created a love that was strong, resilient, and deeply human. They had faced distance, uncertainty, and challenge, and had emerged with hearts more connected than ever. The fourth part of their journey closed with a sense of gratitude, hope, and quiet strength. Knowing that love was not always easy, but was always worth nurturing, protecting, and living fully, the time had come for the final chapter of their journey together, a period that would reveal the depth of what they had built. After months and years of growing together, facing challenges, and learning from each other, they stood in a place of understanding and quiet strength. Their love had been tested through distance, adversity, and uncertainty, and it had emerged resilient, patient, and full of compassion. They had grown as individuals and together. Shaping a bond that was both profound and enduring, they began to think about the future. Not in vague terms, but in small, tangible steps that they could take together. They discussed home, shared goals, and ways to continue supporting each other. It was not about wealth or status, but about creating a life filled with respect, understanding, and daily care. They planned for days when one would need comfort, moments when challenges might arise, and ways to celebrate the small joys that made life beautiful. Every plan was rooted in love and consideration for the other, a reflection of how deeply they had come to know each other. In this final stage, they also understood the importance of legacy. Their love was not only for themselves, but also for the people around them. They engaged in acts of kindness, offered guidance to younger friends, created spaces of understanding and care in their community. They realized that the love they shared had the power to inspire, to heal, and to bring hope to others. Through these acts, they experienced the joy of giving beyond themselves, a natural extension of the empathy and devotion that had characterized their relationship. There were moments of reflection. As they looked back on their journey together, they remembered the day they first met, the slow growth of trust, the challenges that tested them, and the small victories that had brought them closer. Each memory was treasured, not for its grandeur, but for its significance in shaping who they were and the bond they shared. They realized that the ordinary moments, filled with attention, care, and presence, had become extraordinary in their lasting impact. One day, they walked through the town, noticing how it had changed and yet remained familiar. They recalled the small cafes, the riverbanks, and the hill where they often sat together. The town had witnessed the unfolding of their love, and it had also been touched by it. They felt gratitude for the ordinary spaces that had hosted moments of connection, understanding, and joy. The physical environment became a symbol of the journey, each location holding memories of growth, support, and care. Their love also deepened through the quiet understanding of impermanence. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, and that no moment could last forever. Yet this awareness did not bring fear, but appreciation. Each day spent together became precious, each conversation meaningful, and each act of care intentional. They learned to value presence over perfection, understanding that love was not a series of perfect moments, but a continuous effort to be present, compassionate, and supportive. They celebrated life in simple ways, finding joy in shared meals, walks through nature, and the rhythm of daily routines. They laughed together over memories, offered comfort when the other was weary, and created a rhythm of connection that was reliable and sustaining. They discovered that love was strengthened not by grand gestures but by consistency, attentiveness, and the small, deliberate choices made every day to nurture the bond at times. Challenges still appeared, as life is never without them. Illness, disagreements, and unexpected changes tested their patience and resolve. Yet each challenge became an opportunity to demonstrate care, empathy, and commitment. They approached problems together, discussing, supporting, and finding solutions that respected both perspectives. These experiences reinforced the depth of their connection, showing that love was not only about harmony but about the ability to navigate difficulty with understanding and grace. Their relationship also inspired growth in other areas of life. They pursued interests, creative endeavors, and personal goals, always with awareness of how their choices affected each other. They encouraged each other to explore potential, take risks, and embrace opportunities while remaining grounded in the support they shared. This balance of individuality and partnership created a dynamic, evolving connection. Where love was both a foundation and a catalyst for growth, they also engaged in storytelling, recounting their journey to others in ways that inspired reflection and hope. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers witnessed the depth of care, patience, and resilience they had cultivated. Their story became a quiet testimony of what love could be when rooted in empathy, attention, and unwavering support. People were drawn not by dramatics, but by the authenticity, simplicity, and human warmth that radiated from their connection. The passing seasons marked the ongoing nature of life, yet their love remained steady. They observed the change in leaves, the bloom of flowers, and the rhythm of the river, finding metaphors for their own journey. They saw that life was a cycle of growth, challenge, and renewal, and that love, when nurtured, could endure every turn. They drew strength from the constancy of their bond, knowing that even as the world changed around them, they had each other. In quiet moments, they reflected on the lessons learned. They understood that love required presence, patience, trust, and empathy. It required forgiveness, the courage to be vulnerable, and the willingness to act for the good of the other. They had discovered that true love was not simply an emotion but a practice, lived in daily acts of care, understanding, and support. This awareness brought peace, joy, and a deep sense of fulfillment as they approached the later chapters of life together. They focused on nurturing the relationship that had grown through shared experience, challenge, and devotion. They created new memories, cherished old ones, and continued to build a life based on understanding and mutual support. Each day was an opportunity to demonstrate love in action, to care without expectation, and to celebrate the quiet beauty of shared life. The final part of their story emphasized that love, at its core, is about consistency, understanding, and the willingness to be present through every circumstance. It is about small gestures, shared moments, and enduring commitment. They had walked a journey together that included joy and pain, hope and fear, distance and closeness, and they emerged with hearts intertwined in a bond that was deep, human, and timeless. By the end, they had created a life and a love that was remarkable not for its drama, but for its authenticity and depth. Their story was remembered and felt by those who knew them, a testament to what can be achieved when two people choose to care, support, and grow together every day. The fifth part closed with the understanding that their love would remain a guiding light, a source of inspiration, and a model of what it means to truly walk through life with someone. Side by side, heart to heart, after years of shared experiences, the two people continued their journey together, discovering new layers of connection and understanding. Life had given them challenges, joys, and lessons, and they faced each day with a sense of gratitude and togetherness. Even in the quiet moments, the depth of their bond was evident. They had learned that love was not static, but a living, evolving force that required attention, care, and a willingness to grow with each other. They spent mornings walking through fields that stretched beyond the town, watching the sun rise and feeling the gentle wind on their faces. These walks became a ritual, a time to reflect and share thoughts that might have been too small or too deep for the busy world. Sometimes they spoke of past memories, recalling moments of laughter, difficulty, and unexpected discovery. Other times, they simply walked side by side, letting the silence communicate what words could not. This quiet presence strengthened their bond, making them feel as if their hearts spoke in ways no one else could hear. Life in the town continued around them, but they had carved out a space of their own. They visited familiar places, helped neighbors, and engaged in activities that brought them joy and connection. Yet even in ordinary moments, they found extraordinary meaning because they shared them. A meal prepared together, a conversation under the stars, or a small act of kindness toward someone in need became moments that reminded them of the depth of care and empathy they had cultivated over time. One afternoon, they discovered an old building at the edge of the town, abandoned and worn but filled with potential. Together, they decided to restore it, creating a space for community gatherings, creativity, and shared experiences. The work was hard, filled with physical effort and careful planning. But each nail, brushstroke, and repaired wall became a testament to their shared commitment. The building transformed slowly, reflecting the dedication and care that mirrored their own journey. They invited others to join, and soon the space became alive with laughter, learning, and shared purpose. Through these projects, they realized that love was not only about the two of them, but also about the energy and warmth they could bring to others. Their connection inspired kindness, patience, and creativity in those around them. They saw that small, thoughtful acts could ripple through a community, and that nurturing love within themselves allowed them to extend it outward in meaningful ways. Their lives became intertwined not only with each other, but with the lives of those they touched. They also spent time reflecting on challenges they had faced, understanding how each difficulty had shaped them. Moments of doubt, fear, and separation had tested them. But overcoming those challenges had strengthened their understanding, patience, and compassion. They spoke often about the lessons learned, sharing insights about resilience, forgiveness, and the quiet courage required to maintain trust and connection over time. Their conversations became a source of growth, reminding them that love required effort, understanding, and commitment every day, in addition to reflection. They embraced creativity as a form of expression and connection. They wrote, painted, and created together, translating feelings and memories into tangible forms. Their creative work was not for recognition, but for the joy of shared expression, for capturing moments that might otherwise be fleeting. These activities deepened their connection, showing them new dimensions of each other and allowing them to explore the inner landscapes of heart and mind together. Evenings were often spent sitting under the open sky, watching the stars appear one by one. They shared dreams for the future, small and large, practical and imaginative, and found joy in envisioning possibilities together. These moments of planning and dreaming were not bound by expectation, but by hope, allowing them to nurture ambition, curiosity, and inspiration in each other. They realized that love was strengthened when it encouraged growth, exploration, and shared purpose. During this time, they also faced new challenges that required patience and empathy. Health concerns, unexpected responsibilities, and changes in circumstance tested their resilience. Yet every trial was approached as a team, with open communication, mutual support, and careful understanding. They learned that love was not about avoiding difficulties, but about approaching them together, offering strength, compassion, and encouragement in every moment. These experiences reinforced their trust, showing them that the foundation it built was strong enough to weather the storms of life. They began to mentor younger members of the community, sharing lessons learned through their experiences. They encouraged acts of kindness, empathy, and patience, helping others discover the beauty of connection and trust. Their influence spread quietly, creating a sense of community and shared care. They understood that love extended beyond romantic connection and could be expressed through support, guidance, and presence in the lives of others. Travel became another way to deepen their bond. They explored nearby towns, forests, and rivers, observing life from new perspectives and sharing adventures that enriched their understanding of the world. Each journey became an opportunity for reflection, discovery, and the strengthening of trust. They found that experiencing new environments together brought fresh appreciation for each other and reinforced the importance of facing life as partners, companions, and friends. They continued to practice small acts of devotion and care, preparing a meal, offering a comforting word, leaving a note, or simply holding hands became meaningful gestures that reminded them of the love that sustained them. They recognized that these small actions carried more weight than any grand display, creating daily affirmations of attention, presence, and commitment. Love, they understood, was built in the ordinary moments, made extraordinary through care and intention. Through all these experiences, they reflected on the impermanence of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. They understood that challenges, joy, growth, and change were all part of the human experience. Their connection had become a source of stability and comfort, allowing them to approach life with courage, empathy, and gratitude. They found that love was not simply about happiness, but about navigating life together with awareness, patience, and mutual respect. As the years went on, their shared story became a tapestry of ordinary and extraordinary moments, a collection of experiences that shaped them individually and as a pair. They celebrated achievements, endured hardships, and created memories that would last a lifetime. The love they shared became a guiding force, helping them make choices that reflected care, understanding, and respect for one another and the world around them. They also took time to celebrate the beauty of the natural world. Watching sunsets, walking along rivers, and sitting under star-filled skies reminded them of life beyond daily routines. These moments reinforced a sense of wonder, gratitude, and connection. They realized that love and appreciation for life were intertwined, each deepening the other, and that observing beauty together strengthened their bond in ways both subtle and profound. In this part of their journey, they continued to discover the endless possibilities of love. Every challenge met, every act of care, and every shared experience reinforced the depth of connection. They learned that love was not a destination but a journey, one that required attention, patience, empathy, and creativity. They embraced this understanding fully, letting it guide their choices and shape the life they shared. By the end of this part, they had cultivated a love that was enduring, human, and deeply satisfying. Their journey together had spanned years of shared joy, challenge, and growth. They had learned the quiet power of presence, the strength found in vulnerability, and the transformative impact of empathy and care. The sixth part of their story closed with hearts full of gratitude, a deep sense of connection, and the knowledge that love, when nurtured with attention, respect, and devotion, could continue to grow and inspire for a lifetime.